Martin Copenhaver, in a brilliant book on the public and private lives of ministers and rabbis, shares how all professions have their pet peeves. Doctors, for instance, can become quite crabby when a social occasion turns into a professional consultation. Teachers get annoyed when people comment on how nice it must be to have summers off, probably because teachers often have to take on a second job in the summer just to make ends meet. Attorneys complain that if they never hear another lawyer joke, it would be too soon. Rabbis and ministers are no different. In case you didn't know, rabbis often get annoyed by what people say to us when they find out we're rabbis. When I fly somewhere, as some of you know, I don't even say I'm a rabbi. I don't lie, but instead of saying I'm a rabbi, I say that I work with funeral homes. I really do, at which point the passenger beside me usually changes the subject. Notices my ring, asks if I have kids. If I say I'm a rabbi, then I have to hear about someone's problem with organized religion, or why this person doesn't attend church or synagogue, or a story about a religious leader they like or don't like. So Copenhaver imagines snappy comebacks rabbis and ministers think but would never dare say. For instance, someone says, "Rabbi, I think of myself as spiritual, but I don't need a synagogue. It's not for me." Our unspoken response, "So you like to pick and choose your beliefs," which really means that it's all about you. Who said a synagogue is supposed to be just about you? Or, "I thought it was important to go to synagogue when my children were young, to give them a spiritual foundation. But now that they are bar and bat mitzvah, I don't go to temple much anymore." Unspoken response. "So you wanted to give your children a foundation in something you don't really care about much yourself?" Or, "I don't believe in a God who would give children cancer or condemn all Muslims to hell. Did it occur to you that I might not believe in that God either?" Or one of my favorites, "Rabbi, I'm into Native American spirituality." Really? Which tribe? Just a few more. Someone says, "I stopped believing in God when I looked at all of the terrible things that have been done in the name of religion." Response, "So God is to blame for all the things that misguided people have done in God's name? How about all of the things that have been done in the name of the nation state? Are you thinking of becoming an anarchist as well?" Or finally, "I'm not religious. I don't go to a minyan or keep kosher." Response, "But you do God's unfinished business driving people to doctor's appointments, and you deliver Meals on Wheels to shut-ins, and you even drove someone to tonight's service. Since when is ritual a more religious act than helping others?" Let's stay with that last one tonight. According to the Talmud's greatest rabbi, Hillel, Judaism's essential teachings do not center on ritual or faith, important as they are. According to Hillel, ritual and faith are the means to the most important thing in Judaism, being ethical. Everything else is a bridge to the ethical. Rabbi Joseph Telushkin's biography of Hillel highlights this point and imagines the following conversation. Two Jews are speaking about a third Jew, and one of them asks if the person being discussed is religious. How do you know if this guy is religious? The answer is invariably based on the person's level of ritual observance. Is he religious? Of course he is. He not only keeps kosher, he keeps glatt kosher. He doesn't even drive on the Sabbath. Yes, he's religious. He's super religious. Or alternatively, he doesn't keep kosher, he drives on the Sabbath, so he's not religious. That's the basic conversation about who is religious and who is not religious in today's Jewish world. It is virtually inconceivable, on the other hand, that you would ever overhear the following conversation. Is so-and-so a religious person? Oh, definitely. How do you know? Because he's very careful never to embarrass anyone, particularly in public. And he always judges other people fairly. And he's a mensch when no one else is looking. Conversations like this simply don't happen, Telushkin argues, because religiosity today is defined strictly on the basis of ritual observance, not ethical conduct. But according to Rabbi Hillel, the essence of Jewish religiosity is ethical conduct. And it's not just Hillel. Centuries before Hillel, a lonely man brought a shattering indictment against his nation. His name was not Barack Obama or Rick Perry. This leader voiced a piercing protest against those who claimed to be religious and who professed to be right because they were careful about what they ate or did not eat on Yom Kippur. This lonely man disturbed his fellow countrymen because he argued that it was not their wealth or power or prayer that made them great. What made them great was their ethical concern for others. This man warned his people that they were fanning the flames of national disaster because of their abandonment of the most vulnerable members of society, and this man was nearly executed for speaking up. He nearly lost his life for the sake of a moral issue. This man who protested centuries before Hillel was a prophet. His name was Isaiah, and his nation was the Jewish people. His message, in fact, is the Haftorah reading our President Nancy Robinson will read tomorrow morning. In Isaiah's time, as now, Jews flocked to the temple to observe this holiest night in the Jewish calendar. Most of them left the temple tomorrow fully convinced of their virtue if they prayed and fasted according to ritual. But Isaiah let them have it. He said, you people ask, why when we fasted did God not see? Why when we starved our bodies did God pay no heed? Because on your fast day, he answers, you go about your business the same way. You fast and then you keep on fighting. Is this the kind of fast you think I desire? Do you really think this is why a person should take a day to reflect and fast and afflict his or her soul? Do you really think putting on ritual trappings is the purpose of this day? Do you call that kind of fast one that is favorable to the Lord? Is not this the fast I desire? To unlock the chains of wickedness, to let people who are suffering go free. Fast from food, Isaiah says, so that you will remember to share your bread with the hungry and take the wretched poor into your home rather than run away from the poverty around you. When you see the naked, Isaiah continues, you are to clothe them and not ignore them. That is the purpose of fasting, says Isaiah. Only then will light and healing come to you and everyone around you. That's Isaiah 58. Talk about chutzpah. Those words were a zinger in Isaiah's day 2,500 years ago, and they remain a zinger today. Millions of Jews around the world will flock to the synagogue tonight and tomorrow, thousands here alone, in an annual attempt to satisfy our ritual conscience. But they and we forget that religion, which is confined to a few hours in a sanctuary, is little more than the baseball game you may be missing right now or the football games you may miss tomorrow. They're fun to watch, something you think you can't possibly miss, but something totally useless 1 week or 1 month later. Judaism has great ritual, but the goal of Isaiah and Hillel was never to see how many Jews they could get to pray or fast. We are supposed to fast because of our sacred mandate to build a better world by remembering others much worse off. I'll put it in one sentence. The world would never be poorer for Jews who ignore the mechanics of ritual, but the world would be poorer for Jews who ignore the suffering that surrounds them. Now, I personally find meaning in ritual and prayer. I'm glad to see others of you do too. No doubt Hillel and Isaiah did. But I agree with both of them that the religious Jew is not the ritually observant Jew only. The religious Jew is one who joins hands with the prophet Isaiah and Hillel and feels commanded to act a certain way, like Coach Josh Pastner, a proud Jew and member of this temple. He did not know about the email I received about him from one of my dear friends who's a leading Boston rabbi. Dear Micah, the email reads, my son Jeremy and I were at Madison Square Garden for the Jimmy V Classic last fall. My alma mater, Kansas, faced Memphis. My son and I were both wearing KU jerseys since I graduated from there. Soon after the game, this Memphis coach, Pastner, who I understand is Jewish, was headed in our direction. It was awkward shortly after the game because the three of us were in a part of the lower stadium where we were crammed in and suddenly facing each other. Nobody was moving. He looked at our shirts, then put out his hand, introduced himself seconds after the loss, and said, congratulations, you have a great program at KU and a great coach. We were stunned, my rabbinic friend said. Memphis had just lost the game, and he was teaching my kid a lesson, and me too. I said something to the effect of congratulating him on the great job he was doing, but I was really taken by his sincerity and kindness when no one else was looking. It was really, really impressive on his part. Of course, he didn't know I was a rabbi. I was just some Jayhawk fan with his kid. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a sports story. According to Hillel's teachings in the Talmud, in that situation, Josh wasn't only acting nice, he was fulfilling Rabbi Hillel's definition of what it means to act, behave, and be a Jew in religious terms when you're not praying or doing something ritually. In Hillel's day, the word religious meant ethical. That is why when Hillel was asked to summarize Judaism on one foot to a person interested in converting to Judaism, Hillel answered, and I know many of you know, what is hateful to you, do not do to any person. All the rest is commentary. Now go and learn it. It was only hundreds of years later when a new religion named Christianity emerged, which emphasized Hillel's ethics, like the Golden Rule. It was only then that Judaism reacted to Christianity by stressing ritual as religious and de-emphasizing the ethical as religious. Well, I think it's time we brought back the ethical core of Judaism for all Jews. And the pillar of modern orthodoxy, Rabbi Soloveitchik, would agree, as I was reminded by Temple Torah teacher Dr. Joe Levy. In Soloveitchik's book, Reflections of the Rav, he writes, and I quote, remember, this is an Orthodox rabbi, people who are ritually observant but ethically deficient distort Judaism. It is moral schizophrenia to separate ethics from God. There can be no Judaism without morality, end quote. There you have it. The crux of Reform Judaism stated by a modern Orthodox rabbi. Rituals change, customs change, but ethical imperatives like right behavior and loving deeds do not. Rituals are preferences, not principles. And in Reform Judaism, principles drive rituals, not vice versa. And this is not watered-down Judaism. It is principle-centered Judaism. For instance, the principle of complete equality of the sexes explains why girls read from the Torah here exactly the same way boys do, at least on this pulpit. Now, clearly, this veers from Orthodox ritual. But Reform is okay with that if the principle is just. Orthodoxy is a beautiful path for its adherents. Yet it's not where 85 to 90% of American Jews are at or will ever be. I love Torah no matter where it comes from. And I love my Orthodox Jewish friends and have some very, very close Orthodox rabbinic friends. But the big picture for the future destiny of Memphis Jewry and American Jewry is clear. And it is not going to be secured by the sudden conversion of hordes of hundreds or thousands of Reform, conservative, and secular Jews to Orthodoxy. Sure, there will always be a small core of wonderful, ritually observant Jews, and an even smaller number who will care whether or not a particular cake is made from kosher milk. But the overwhelming majority of Jews do not care and certainly will not base their Judaism on whether their red wine is kosher. What will save Judaism for most Jews in Memphis and America is a Judaism of relevance. One which doesn't ignore tradition, but one which extends it in our own time and place. What will save Judaism is a Judaism grounded in ethics. Ethics is fundamental, not only to Judaism, but to religion and to eschatology in general. If that word throws you, eschatology is what religions teach about heaven and hell, the destiny of humanity, the end time. And yesterday was fortuitous, beshert for me, in addressing this link and thinking about today, this link between our ethics and our core beliefs. My lunch meeting yesterday was a discussion with white pastor friends, a discussion that centered on heaven, who gets in and who does not. And the discussion was triggered by a well-known and daring evangelical named Rob Bell in his new book, Love Wins. Reverend Bell has been branded a heretic for asking the following question: is Gandhi burning in hell, or is it possible that God would welcome other people in heaven too? Now, in evangelical circles, that question borders on the heretical. So I offered two questions in response. Why label someone a heretic for asking a question? And more importantly, why would a Gandhi or a Rabbi Wax not be in heaven for embracing all of God's children, while a select few who exclude others be the only ones granted admittance? Is the God of all that small? That was my lunch. Following dinner, I accepted Mayor Wharton's invitation to speak about a vision for Memphis following his re-election last night. I do not endorse candidates for three reasons. First, because it's illegal. Second, whenever religion and politics mix, both suffer. And third, I believe that religion must always transcend the political and not be sullied by it. But speaking at the invitation of an elected official received the blessing of my closest temple advisors, our president. So I joined Reverend Billy Kiles and Pastor Keith Norman for that honor. And while I was waiting to speak last night, an African-American minister at my table, actually I was the only white minister there, this pastor told me the following story that happened to a member of his congregation in recent months. A father with a great job fell victim to his company's downsizing. He had a good job. His son plays for a football team at a high school nobody at Temple or in East Memphis would ever attend. Having struck out in his job search and needing any job, the father swallowed his pride and accepted a position at the neighborhood McDonald's, a place where the father's son and football buddies go after games. Well, the son was about to walk into the McDonald's with his teammates a few weeks ago to celebrate a Friday night win. But upon seeing his demoted father at the cash register, he could not go inside because he was so sad and ashamed. Apparently, it was the same McDonald's some of the boys' teammates were also applying for work. People are hurting so badly, Rabbi, this pastor said to me, but, and I was going to commiserate with him, he said, but we have faith in progress, not pessimism. I asked, thinking about my lunch, faith in this lifetime or in heaven? He said to me before I walked on, Rabbi, God will take care of us in heaven. It's down here that God is waiting for us to take care of each other. The pastor's right. Heaven is fine. Earth is where all the problems are. The question is whether our ethics on earth match what we profess to believe about heaven and hell, and vice versa. Here at Temple, our theology is that human beings have been touched by God to better this world and everyone in it. Our ethics and heaven match. My lunch yesterday was about evangelical church folks who are not on Skid Row, yet who are obsessed with heaven. Post-dinner was with pastors from Raleigh and South Memphis whose members are on Skid Row, but who are not obsessed with heaven, even though I could understand if heaven was their obsession because of their present suffering. But it's not. Their concern instead is Hillel and Isaiah's concern with the here and now coming together, Jew and Gentile, black and white, rich and poor, every man, woman, and child. Let me share just one more beautiful Jewish story about a teenager who wrote his reaction to the binding of Isaac's story you all know. Isaac, the teen wrote, was on the way up Mount Moriah with his dad. Then he was tied up and laid on the altar, ready to be sacrificed. And my heart began to beat even faster. It actually ached with pity for poor Isaac. Then Abraham lifted the knife, and now my heart actually froze with fear. Suddenly, the voice of God's angel was heard. Abraham, Abraham, do not lay your hand on that child. And here I actually broke out in tears, and I cried, the teen wrote. Why did you cry? The rabbi asked. You know that Isaac was not killed? And the boy answered, yes, I know, Rabbi, but suppose the angel had come just 1 second too late. The rabbi put his arm around the boy's shoulder and whispered, my son, an angel can never come too late. I'm sorry to correct that rabbi. He's right, an angel can never be late. But people made of flesh and blood like you and me can be very late. when it comes to the suffering around us, when it comes to basic things like a decent education for all children in Shelby County, not just our own, when it comes to the urgent issues facing our city, nation, and world, when it comes to Hillel and Isaiah's piercing protest against indifference, when it comes to securing a Jewish future of sizable significance for Memphis and America, when it comes to making heaven right here on earth, rather than deferring it to the next lifetime, none of us can afford to wait to act until the very last second. We must act now. It is true that terrible things have been done in the name of religion. Extremism in all forms is destructive. But good religion, religion which focuses on the ethical, a religion and a Judaism abetted by ritual and learning, but which defines religiosity by loving others and the standard of one God whose chief concern is the way human beings treat each other right here and right now. That is the core of Judaism. And that has been Judaism's best religious idea for the building of a better world. By this definition, the religious are not who you may think they are. Rather than looking at me with a tallis and a yarmulke and saying, he's religious, the religious one could be the woman sitting next to you who tutors inner city kids and drives cancer patients to chemo treatments. By this definition, the religious one is not the basketball coach who says a prayer to Jesus or Moses at half court following a game. The religious coach is the one who extends a hand to the fan of an opponent who just defeated him, thus demonstrating God's decency, civility, and kindness. Please don't misunderstand me. Don't give up on rituals that bring meaning to your life. And don't give up on God either, because God never gives up on you. But consider being religious by Hillel's ethical standard too. After all, it's the Jewish thing to do. Amen.